When a person goes to medical school to study that particular science, medicine, they study the basic principles of physiology, which are universal. They apply to everybody. If everyone's cells, muscles, and organs were constituted and functioned differently, we'd all be unique physiological entities unto ourselves, and doctors couldn't make diagnoses, perform surgeries, or dispense medicines. It's this fact, the fact that we're all essentially the same anatomically and physiologically, that makes it possible for medical science to exist at all as a viable discipline. Now, the science of exercise, the science of productive bodybuilding exercise, like the science of medicine, is based on the principles of human physiology also. The fact that the basic principles of human physiology are universal, again, is what makes it possible for me to state that there is only one valid theory of training, i.e., one best way to train. It is not my mere opinion that every human being requires intense training to stimulate optimal increases in strength and size. It's a well-established fact beyond debate. Nobody would argue that aerobics is the best way to build muscle. They may not understand it explicitly, but they recognize or sense on some level that the reason for this is that aerobics is too low in intensity to stimulate an optimal increase in strength and size, or any increase in strength or size. It is a well-established fact beyond debate that high-intensity training is an absolute requirement for stimulating increases in strength and size. That's the first principle of the theory of high-intensity training. And because high-intensity training is very, very demanding on the body's limited recovery ability, it follows logically that such training must be brief and infrequent to allow for the production of an increase in strength and size. That's the second part of the theory. In order to allow the body to produce the increase that was stimulated as a result of the training, the workouts have to be brief and infrequent. In other words, bodybuilding is not aerobics. This is the hard part. This is the hard part for most people. Most bodybuilders would find it quite easy to accept the first principle, that you've got to train to failure, that the training has to be very intense. The hard part is in accepting the second two principles, namely that exercise has to be brief and infrequent. They all have in their subconscious the idea that more is better, which is actually an ethical economic principle. More money, more success, i.e. more values are better than less. You can't take a principle from economics or ethics and apply it to bodybuilding and expect optimal results. That's a logical fallacy known as context switching, taking a principle from one context of knowledge and applying it to another and expecting to get something out of it. Bodybuilding is not aerobics. If your goal is to improve upon your endurance, which is what aerobics is about, then it's appropriate to use the more is better principle, because that's your goal, to be able to do more and more work. Bodybuilding requires the application of a different principle, namely harder is better. And the harder you train, the less time you can or should train. One of my favorite analogies here is with track and field. Are you not familiar with the fact that sprinters always have larger, more muscular thighs and calves than distance runners? Well, if it was the sheer volume of the work that was responsible for inducing muscular growth beyond normal levels in human beings, then distance runners would have tremendously large thighs and calves, when in fact, in every case, they have stringy muscles. They grossly overtrain. Sprinters, the guys who only run 100 to 400 meters very intensely, have tremendously developed legs. They run very, very hard. This prevents them from running for long distances. But likewise with bodybuilding training. When you are training to failure on every set, and you're not resting too long between sets, it's not just that you shouldn't train for long periods, but you literally cannot. No one can. It's in the nature of things. Arthur Jones advanced this theory 20 years ago, namely that to be productive, exercise has to be intense, brief, and infrequent. Those are the three principles of the theory. He was right. I recognized it immediately. While he was explaining it to me, I reflected on my own experience. I connected those ideas with other knowledge I already had. I saw logically, in reason, why this was true. But Arthur Jones was missing one bit of crucial knowledge. Let me explain. When he first advanced that theory 20 years ago, he suggested that everybody trained the full body 3 days a week with 12 to 15 sets of workout. Now, compared to everything else being espoused at the time, all other training theories, that certainly did seem brief and infrequent. But here was the one bit of crucial knowledge he was missing. There exists a wide range of variation among individuals with regard to exercise tolerance. Don't you know certain people who don't tolerate exposure to high-intensity ultraviolet sunlight as well as others? That's a genetic trait. Follow me here. All genetic traits are expressed across a broad continuum. The most directly perceivable genetic trait is height. With regard to height, you've got midgets at one extreme and the giants of the NBA at the other. That's a wide range of expression of a genetic trait, from midget to giant. With intelligence, you've got morons at the far left end and geniuses at the far right and everything in between. Then again, with individual sunlight tolerance, you've got albino Scandinavians at the left end and darker skin types at the right who can tolerate long periods of frequent exposure to high-intensity sunlight. I have the evidence, but don't you think it stands to reason that that same thing would apply to individual exercise tolerance? I have some clients who are only doing 3 sets every 7 days. Till I got them down to that, they were making no progress. That was the one bit of crucial knowledge that Arthur Jones was missing 20 years ago.
Because the theory that you always hear is that it does require hours and hours to look like that.
The mistaken premise there is that more is better. And the body doesn't necessarily work that way. If 2 hours or 4 hours a day were good, well, why not train 12 hours a day? Training is a form of stress, and up to a certain point in time, exposing the body to stress can be beneficial. But beyond a definite period in time, it can actually be detrimental.
Not more is better, not less is better, but precise is best, just like in medicine. There's something in medicine called the narrow therapeutic window you may be familiar with. There's a certain amount of medication you take, a narrow therapeutic window, and you'll cure the disease, cure the symptoms. Anything beyond the narrow therapeutic window and you go into the negative, you overdose. Exercise science should be properly viewed as flowing from medical science, where in both cases we're looking to effect a positive physical change. In medicine, the first thing the researchers had to do was identify the chemical compound that would serve as the medicine to induce the positive physical change. The next logical step, inevitable step, was to discover how much of the medication in terms of volume, how many pills a day, and frequency, how often. Same thing with exercise science, again too, where we're looking to induce or create a positive physical change.
Mike, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would like to improve their physiques and their bodies and would want to go to perhaps a trainer. But what should somebody look at when they are looking into getting a trainer? What are some of the qualifications maybe?
Well, not necessarily his muscular development or even his athletic appearance. It's actually very difficult. Presumably the person's going to the gym because he knows little or nothing about training. I think the only way to do it would be to assess his general intelligence level and listen as to how well he explains the principles of productive exercise, as to whether or not he has a grasp of the principles of exercise.